Marvel took a huge risk with Guardians of the Galaxy, but it paid off big time. Unlike the other Marvel movies, it wasn't based on a comic that everyone had grown up knowing. The current version of the Guardians of the Galaxy had only been around a few years at that point, and wasn't one of the company's major sellers. Fortunately, this gave the filmmakers tons of freedom, and boy did they use it. Most adaptations lose characters or important details fans loved from the books. However, we think that the film actually improved on the source material. If you're a fan of the comics, we think you'll agree with this list. And if you're not, we think that you'll be surprised by what was included in some of the original comics. Let us know what facts took you by surprise. And if you want to join our team of Space Misfits, be sure to subscribe to CBR and hit the notify button so you can join our notification squad and never miss a video going over your head.
Cease your yammering and relieve us from this irksome confinement.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with the walking thesaurus on that one.
Do not ever call me a thesaurus.
Drax is actually funny. When Drax first appeared in Iron Man number 55, he was only a human whose family had been annihilated by Thanos. In the comics, he's usually a serious character, and instead of bringing any comedy to the story, he's mostly nothing more than a generic tough guy. When it was announced that WWE superstar Dave Bautista would play Drax in Guardians of the Galaxy, fans expected more of the same. Drax would probably be a strong guy with stellar abs and not much else to bring to the table. When the character wasn't featured much in the trailers for the film, many took it as a sign that their first assumptions had been correct. Which is why it was such a surprise when fans got into the theaters and discovered that Drax was not only a pretty cool character, but also one of the main sources of comic relief in the film. As Rocket explains, his species doesn't understand metaphors, and this, coupled with his punch first and ask questions later attitude, led to some pretty hilarious and awkward moments of misunderstanding.
You're making me beat up grass!
Not understanding figurative language didn't just have a comedic effect, it also showed boys and girls on the autistic spectrum a hero who thought and acted just like them on the big screen for the very first time, which is incredibly important for kids. So we're glad that the movie decided to make Drax into a character that we can both look up to and laugh with.
You have always been weak, you stupid traitor.
Nobody talks to my friends like that.
They're guarding the galaxy, not just Earth. The entire point of Guardians of the Galaxy is that they're an intergalactic crime-fighting team who travel through space. With that wide of a range, it would make sense that no two members of the team would be from the same planet, let alone the same species. However, in the comics, it seems like humans make up more than half the galaxy's population. Heroes like Iron Man, Venom, Captain Marvel, The Thing, and Kitty Pryde are all Earthlings who have taken their turns as Guardians, making it feel a little like Space Avengers. Not to mention that Drax is a human spirit reincarnated after being iced by Thanos. Making Peter Quill the only human on the team is one small step for Starlord and a giant leap in the right direction for the rest of the series. Despite the fact that Peter Quill is a human, he wasn't raised on Earth, or as they call it, Terra, so it makes sense that he'd be wandering around space. It isn't just the superhero team that has an overwhelming amount of humans in the comics. Despite the fact that aliens act as though Earth is a backwater planet that's isolated from the rest of the universe, the Guardians run into Earthlings out in space all the time. Aside from our favorite Marvel superheroes from other comics appearing to join the team, there are several high-ranking humans in the Nova Corps, a crew of astronauts that Starlord must save from a group of pirates, and a Russian cosmonaut named Cosmo, who's the commander of Knowhere, and also happens to be a dog. Keeping Peter Quill as the only Earthling emphasizes exactly how far he is from home and how alone he is among his kind. Also, what would be the point of telling a story in space if it turned out that everyone was from Earth anyway?
What do you still have it for? Well, what are we gonna do, leave it in there? I can't believe you had that in your purse! It's not a purse, it's a knapsack!
Starlord got a weapons downgrade. When Peter Quill first becomes Starlord in the comics, he has two very important pieces of equipment. His sentient spaceship named Ship, and an element gun that can shoot fire, water, earth, and air. Now, his elemental gun does make an appearance in the animated series based on the movies, but we won't count that since it's not actually MCU canon. Both of these are very impressive, but honestly, a little overpowered for a hero just starting out. Also, with how unique each individual Guardian is, we're not sure how well a sentient ship would fit into the group dynamic, or how kindly it would take Rocket turning pieces of it into a bomb. Honestly, a gun that shoots elements could either be really awesome or really gimmicky. gimmicky depending on the special effects. Now we're sure that James Gunn could make it awesome, since he has a tendency to do that, but we're glad he kept it simple. It was really for the best to leave both these items on the chopping block, like the comics did in the lead up to the Annihilation Cosmic Revamp. Now, the only special equipment that Peter Quill has are his ankle rockets, mask, and helmet, which honestly make a lot more sense for his character anyway. Quill is less about having a ton of gadgets and more about how he uses them. Indiana Jones only has a gun, a whip, and a hat, and similarly, it's fun for both the writers and the viewers to figure out how Quill will slyly get out of sticky situations with his limited but useful tools.
Question. What if I see something that I want to take and it belongs to someone else?
You will be arrested.
But what if I want it more than the person who has it?
Still illegal.
The Intergalactic Police Force actually does police work. In the 2006 storyline Annihilation, the entire Nova Corps is destroyed by Annihilus after he leads his army to Xandar. The only one left standing is Richard Rider, who ends up teaming up with Starlord to defeat Annihilus, and then eventually becoming a Guardian himself during the sequel Annihilation Conquest. This is all well and good for the Guardians of the comics who, although they're not outlaws as in the movies, never necessarily got along with law enforcement. However, without Nova Corps around, they're pretty much free to travel the galaxy as they please without many consequences. Having the Nova Corps around helps illustrate what the Guardians are not: galactic police. If Nova Corps are the lawful good, the Guardians of the Galaxy are chaotic good. They'll do the right thing in the end, but they'll break a rule or 10 in the process. They're not Superman. They're not squeaky clean. Starlord was a professional thief before the events of the movie. Having the contrast of the uniformed Nova is very useful to make the Guardians seem less like a bright and shiny superhero team and more like a scrappy ragtag bunch of adventurers looking to steal from the rich and give to the needy, and save the entire galaxy in the process.
I will fight beside you. And in the end, see my wife and daughter again.
No one's overpowered. One of the greatest things about the Guardians of the Galaxy movie is how completely normal all of our heroes are. At least in the first film, Peter Quill is an Earthborn human who happened to find himself fighting bad guys in space. Gamora and Drax are both strong, but it seems that they're only just slightly above average for their species, and have only gained their abilities through training rather than by supernatural means. Rocket Raccoon relies entirely on weapon-making creativity and pure wit. Groot is the only one who seems to have any special abilities, and even then, he's just a tree who can say 3 words.
I'm Groot.
And after he uses his ability in the most impressive way he can via a giant wooden life preserve, he essentially disintegrates and has to start his whole life from scratch. This normalcy makes the team even more interesting. It's believable that they might actually be beaten. This is in stark contrast to their Marvel brethren, the Avengers. Writers constantly have to figure out how to write Thor, Hulk, Captain America, and the Vision out of those battles that the heroes are meant to lose, or even be a close call, because between the 4 of them, they can pretty much take care of anything. That's not even including Iron Man, Black Widow, or Hawkeye. The fact that this group of heroes can't take down a villain within 20 minutes is sometimes unbelievable. In the comics, the team of Guardians usually has at least one superpowered character, such as Adam Warlock, Moondragon, or Captain Marvel. However, in the movie universe, the lack of these indestructible characters forces the hero team to use pure skill to win. Instead of an awesome fight scene where Starlord ultimately overpowers Ronin, he outsmarts him with a dance-off. In a Marvel Cinematic Universe full of superpowered superheroes, the ragtag team of the Guardians of the Galaxy is a breath of fresh air.
You dare to oppose me?
You see what he has turned me into? You kill him, I will help you destroy 1,000 planets.
The birth of a Nebula. When it was announced that Karen Gillan would be in a Marvel movie, Doctor Who fans started buzzing with excitement like a sonic screwdriver. In the movies, Thanos has 2 adopted daughters that he's lent to Ronin, Gamora and Nebula. Of course, we're all familiar with Gamora's softer side, as she fights alongside the Guardians and even takes a fancy to Quill. After Gamora defects, Thanos sends Nebula after her to retrieve the Infinity Stone. Nebula is just as deadly as Gamora, and they're almost a perfect match. Only Nebula seems to lack any of that compassion that her adopted sister has recently discovered. Another cool thing about Nebula? She's a frickin' cyborg. Booyah! Now, it's unclear how much of her is still biological and how much has been replaced by robotic body parts, but with the lack of that information and Rocket's love of building weapons, there's room for an awesome scene after Nebula is cemented as a good guy where she could fuse with some of Rocket's toys. Not much is known about her past, which is good. If it's anything like the comics, then it's best to leave it mysterious. She started out in 1985 as a space pirate who had taken control of Thanos' ship after he had seemingly died. She claimed to be his daughter, which upset Thanos when he returned returned, so he used the Infinity Gauntlet to basically turn her into a zombie. Keeping out the whole pretending to be Thanos' daughter until he caught her aspect of the story was probably a good idea on James Gunn's part.
We've housed the galaxy's largest collection of fauna, relics, and species of all manner.
Knowhere is nowhere. It's unknown who or what is capable of decapitating a being as powerful as a Celestial, but its severed head serves as a home to many that have stumbled upon it. Floating along the edge of known space, in an area called the Rip, various species have hollowed out this giant head and turned it into a base of operations. Knowhere first appeared in Nova number 8 and eventually became the home base of the Guardians of the Galaxy. While Knowhere appeared in the movie essentially the same way as it did in the comics, there was one huge Celestial difference. The Guardians were just visiting. They stopped by just to talk to the Collector about the Infinity Stone, and then they left. Or were forced to retreat away from Ronin's forces. By keeping the team on the move, it makes them feel more like adventurers. We'll admit, it was nice to see Knowhere on the big screen in some capacity, as it's as synonymous with the Guardians as the Batcave is with Batman. While the comic book versions of the Guardians were stationed on Knowhere, they had to deal with the station's politics, and often felt like a security force for Knowhere, and less like Guardians of the entire galaxy.
We do not do that to each other. We're Ravagers. We got a code.
Yeah, and that code is steal from everybody.
Yondu. Ask anyone off the street who's the leader of the Guardians of the Galaxy, they'd probably respond with, "Who are you?" or "Stop grabbing me." But once they calm down, they'd probably tell you that guy from Parks and Rec. Starlord has become the face of the franchise, but as many of you may already know, the Guardians we know and love are actually the second group to use that name. The original team first appeared in 1969's Marvel Superheroes number 18. Since the movie was based on the more recent team, most of the characters from this version did not appear, except for Yondu. While the comic version of Yondu in the 21st century was the last surviving member of his species with a giant fin on top of his head, the film portrayed Yondu as the space pirate responsible for abducting Peter Quill from Earth. He later spent the movie chasing after Quill and trying to retrieve the Infinity Stone that Quill had stolen first. The only real similarity that the movie version had to his comic counterpart is the ability to control arrows by whistling. But this character was an important plot device to further explain Quill's backstory, and rather than making up some new jabroni character, they decided to give fans of the original team a familiar face.
There's one more thing we need to complete the plan. That guy's eye.
No, we don't. No, we don't need that guy's eye.
Every day is free dress day. After the Guardians all stand in a circle like a bunch of jackasses and decide to team up with the Ravagers to protect Xandar from Ronin, there's an undeniably badass montage of each team member getting ready for the incoming war. Drax is shown getting dressed, and when he picks up the shirt that was provided to him, he briefly looks at it before tossing it aside in disgust. The joke was obviously about Drax never wearing a shirt, and when the team finally assembled, only Starlord and Gamora are wearing the provided uniforms. Drax and Groot rock their signature looks as they normally do, and Rocket simply modified his. In the comics, the Guardians spent a period of time all wearing matching uniforms, for the most part. Even Rocket and Groot dressed in pretty much the exact same outfit as Starlord, which was weird. There's just something unsettling about seeing Groot wear pants. It's like if the Silver Surfer just started sporting a lot of khakis. The movie decided not to go with this look, which worked so much better on screen. These outfits could have easily looked campy and corny, taking viewers out of the movie. The Guardians are a ragtag team of intergalactic misfits, and keeping them out of uniform is an easy way to let their individual personalities shine.
There's another name you might know me by.
Starlord.
Would a Starlord by any other name be as sweet? As previously stated, Starlord has a complicated comic book history. The character has been retconned and revamped more than almost anyone in the Marvel Universe, so he's almost nothing like how he originally appeared. Starting out as a copycat, he called himself Starlord after encountering an entity that also went by that name. The entity needed a human, and when Quill volunteered, he was taken to meet the Master of the Sun, who made Quill the next Starlord. Since then, that origin has been completely discarded, leaving the name Starlord as a bit of an outdated piece of fandom. It's a good thing that the film was called Guardians of the Galaxy and not Star-Lord's Space Adventure, because that might have been harder to fill theaters with. In the movie, Peter Quill wanting to be called Star-Lord is a running joke. Nobody takes it seriously, and Quill is either met with confusion or laughter. It isn't until the very end of the film that it's revealed that his mom called him Star-Lord when he was little. Suddenly, the silly nickname took on a deep and personal new meaning, and it's actually touching that Quill would take on this new identity in memory of his mom. It gives you insight into the softer side of Quill, and gave some much-needed depth to the lovable, charming hero.
I know who you are, Peter Quill, and I am not some starry-eyed waif here to succumb to your pelvic sorcery!
That is not what is happening.
We love the Guardians, and we're glad that the filmmakers made these certain tweaks and changes for the better. What do you expect them to include in the next film? What do you think improved the most when the team leaped to the big screen? Who do you think is Quill's dad? Let us know in the comments below, and make sure to like this video, subscribe to CBR, and join the notification squad for more videos like this.